What's up guys, it's Z here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we're profiling one of my personal favorite decks, and today we're taking a look at Sunavalon. And I feel like this deck, it can use so many different engines that right now actually has a really good chance of being a really good deck, and a lot of people don't know what these cards do, so by playing this deck you can get the element of surprise. And I know that this is not a budget deck unfortunately because it uses some of the most expensive engines in the game, but it has so good synergy with all of these engines that it would be a crime not to use all of these in the deck. If you want to make the deck more budget, then of course you can cut any other of the engines that you don't have. I'm going to show you here and maybe put more hand traps or more staples, but the deck again, it can use all of those broken engines so well that it can be a really good contender in the meta. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So by starting with the Sunavalon engine, let's start with the starters. We have 3 copies of Sunset Genius Loki, and I know that the meme about normal monsters being starters is finally true. This card on its own can give you a full combo with Sunavalon Dorias that gives you interruptions on the board that it basically requires only a normal summon of a normal monster, which is absolutely absurd. And because the deck doesn't require any effects on normal summon or anything like that, you can basically imagine what kind of engines I can put in this deck. And because there's also plant monsters, yeah, this deck also has synergy with THERIONs, so you can do so many different stuff to try to either play around hand traps with THERIONs and the adventure package or try to go second and push for game. This deck can do so much, and because this deck relies on normal monsters, there is a really good variety of cards that we can use on top of Sunset Genius Loki to make that consistent. We have 3 copies of Unexpected Die, which basically gives you a Sunset Genius Loki from the deck when you don't have any monsters on the field. We have 3 copies of Painful Decision. This card, not only does it give you Loki in your hand to basically get the starter, but it also puts a plant monster in the graveyard for Lily Borea, so you can do the THERION play before you even commit to the normal summon, so that way they will not be able to even use any hand trap on Dorias, because one of the choke points this deck has is that if you don't have a way to protect Dorias and you haven't drawn Sowing, then you don't really have a play other than just relying on just the engines of the deck. But because of a card like Painful Decision, you can basically get the plant monster before, so you can get to your King Regulus before you even commit to Dorias, so you can negate out a hand trap. And we play 1 copy of 1-for-1, again another card that can special summon Loki from the deck, and if you discard a plant with this card, you can get Regulus on the field, you can discard Water Enchantress with this card, which is basically free because you're going to banish her from the graveyard to get the engine rolling. Another amazing card. So that gives us a total of 10 starters that if you open any one of them, you have at least the Sunavalon combo on its own. But if you combine this with all the other engines, then you have a really scary deck at your hands. Now the deck does play a lot of engine requirements, which I feel like is one of the reasons this deck is not top tier, because you need to play a lot of breaks in the deck in order to make the combo work. So the cards you need to play, first of all, we have 2 copies of Sunsweet Tin. For the combo, you need only 1 copy of Twin, but by playing the second one, you can basically guarantee that you do have some form of follow-up, because the deck, if your board gets cracked with a card like Droplet or something, then you need to be able to push for game at least next turn, and this is where Thrasher comes in. So this card being able to revive on summon basically means that you do have enough monsters on the field in order to be able to go for game, and with Doria Tranti on the field, Thrasher becomes 4k, so if you summon 1 or 2, then you can basically go for game with these 2. So this is why the second copy comes in. You can cut it to 1 if you feel like it's a bit breaky, but I feel like it's kinda necessary to play the second, because if you don't, then your engine basically becomes useless after the first use of the Sunavalon combo, and this is what you don't want to do with the deck, because again, if your board gets cracked, you will not have a follow-up. We play 1 copy of Aromage Laurel. This is one of the cards that you don't really want to draw. All these plants that I'm going to show you after this, they're the cards that you really don't want to see in your hand. They're not the worst if you do, but they don't do anything without the full combo. So these are the ones that get you to the plays because they give you effects. So this card basically, it's the one that has synergy with Aromage, because you get to have more life points than your opponent with Jasmine, and then if your life points are higher than your opponent's, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then if you gain life points, you target a non-tuner plant on the field, you make it a tuner. That effect doesn't matter too much unless you want to play Needle Fiber as well. I am not playing Needle Fiber in this build, but this effect makes it so that you can do so if you want. But the thing is that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can gain 500 life points, which is important because you're going to be link summoning into 2 copies of Jasmine, and by sending this card to the graveyard, you gain life points, and because Jasmine is not a hard once per turn, you're basically going to get 2 searches, so this is why this card is so good. We play 1 copy of Mardel Generator Boss of Light. This is another card that basically gives you a search, and you can summon her from the hand by using the next card I'm going to show you, which is the 1 copy of Snowdrop the Rika Fairy. By tributing a monster, by tributing the plant, you can special summon her and another plant, and then basically you can target a plant you control, and all plant monsters you control in the field become that level, so you target her, they become level 8, so you can summon your Teardrop, which gives you another form of interruption. So these 5 cards here are the plants that you're going to be going through your combo, so you can get to your end board. We play 3 copy of Sunvine Sowing. This card basically on its own fixed all of the problems that Sunavalon's had, because the deck did not really have an effective way to take damage on its own in order to trigger Dorias's effect to summon Healer to go into other plays, but this is a searchable way to do so. Now, you might be wondering why we're playing 3 if this card is searchable. Well, a lot of people don't really know what this deck does, so when they see Dorias and you tell them that it adds a Sunavalon spell and trap, they're going to waste an Ash Blossom on this card. So hard drawing Sowing means that you will be able to play around that, and if you hard draw Sowing, you can still use Dorias's effect to search another card that we have in the deck. So this is why it doesn't really matter if you hard draw this card, it just makes it so you can play around one more hand trap in case you don't have Regulus or you don't have the Griffon Rider on board. This card special summons a plant from the deck, a Sunseed, and then you take 1000 damage, and this 1000 damage that you're going to take, you're going to revive your life points back to 8k with Dorias, and you're going to get yet another monster on field. So this is why this card just makes the deck work. We have one copy of Sunvine Shrine. This is the other card that you're going to be searching in case you already have Sowing in your hand, and this is basically a continuous that you have to discard a card when you activate it, which this is not even a disadvantage in this deck, just because you need cards in the grave to activate effects like Regulus or Borea. Discarding copies of Water Enchantress you don't mind at all because you can activate her effect from the grave, and this is basically a constant revival effect. It's a continuous spell that keeps reviving Loki every single turn from the graveyard, so this is another way you can get back monsters from the graveyard to Link Climb and then go into Thrasher and try to push for damage. And the last Sunavalon card we play in the deck is one copy of Sunavalon Bloom. This is the card you're going to be searching with Doria Trantia, your Link 4, and it's basically an effect that negates all your opponent's current cards on the field. So it's another interruption, so your end board, when you're requiring only Sunavalon cards, usually ends with Doria Trantia, the Birken Lancer, and the Teardrop. These 3 cards are the main stuff you're going to be having on the field, on top of everything else that you have when it comes to the other engines of the deck. So the board that Sunavalon can produce on its own is already good enough. So if you're a fan of Sunavalon and you don't have the cash to basically get all these expensive cards that I'm going to show you right after, then you don't really need them. They're something to make your deck more resilient to hand traps and basically add extra layers of interruption when your starting combo gets interrupted or when you're going second and gives you extra bodies on the board. But again, Sunavalons do not really need all these engines. They are not like part of a main combo or something. They are just extra flavor to the deck. So if you don't have them, don't worry. You can play a lot of hand traps because I didn't play any hand traps in the deck. But if you don't have them, you can play like from 9 to 12 to 15 hand traps in order to be able to make the deck better going second. So it's very easy to replace all those cards. So don't sweat it if you don't have the cards I'm about to show you. But for those who want to play the deck at the most competitive level you can, here are the cards that you need to have in the deck. We have 2 copies of THERION King Regulus. Now, we do play 2 just to have something else to search in case we cannot add it back with this Colosseum, because there will be some players who will know actually how to play around this Colosseum, so you don't get this card back for the follow-up, so you need the second copy to search with either another copy of this Colosseum or Lily Borea in order to be able to establish a negate again. We have 2 copies of Lily Borea. This is an amazing card. It adds any THERION spell and trap from your deck to your hand. You can basically make sure that as long as you get a plant in the grave, which is very easy with cards like Painful Decision and 1-for-1 and all the Sunavalon cards that they go to the graveyard on their own, you can get this and then search your Colosseum, which will search your Regulus, and then basically get a negate this way. And we play 3 copies of THERION Colosseum because this is by far the most broken THERION card. You need to play this at 3. You don't really need to max out on any other monster because of this card, because it searches you anything you need, and not only that, but it also protects your cards and it also recycles your THERIONs. This card does basically everything for the packages. It's just so. Now we also have the adventure package in the deck because this deck relies on the normal summon of a normal monster. It will not activate any effect on normal summon. The only effect that you potentially sometimes activate on normal summon in Sunset Twin, and you don't really want to normal summon this, at least not turn 1. So this package, the adventure package, just have so much synergy with the deck. We have 3 copies of Water Enchantress. Everyone has already seen the ratios of this card. I'm pretty sure this is nothing new to anyone here. We have 3 copies of Rite of Aramazir to get to our Fateful Adventure and the token on the field, and the one-offs, we have 1 copy of Griffon Rider for the Omni Negate, 1 copy of Fateful Adventure to search our monsters, and 1 copy of Draco back because it's just such a broken card, especially because the deck does not really have an inherent way of playing around Mystic Mine. And the thing is, this deck without the adventure package, it cannot really deal that well with Mystic Mine because Regulus does not negate the activation, it only negates effects, so it's not like it can negate Mystic Mine. If you activate Regulus in response to Mystic Mine, nothing happens. The Mystic Mine is still going to stick to the field and it's not going to get destroyed, and you'll just lose your Regulus. So this is why Draco back makes sure that you don't lose the Mystic Mine, because the deck struggles against this card a lot. And the last cards in the deck are basically a couple of staples that you can play. You can replace, again, all of these cards with any staples that you have laying around and can still make a really, really good Sunavalon deck. But again, for the purpose of the video, for making the most competitive Sunavalon build possible, we play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet to make the deck even more scary going second, because the deck can produce some really, really powerful boards cards, but it's not the best at playing around a lot of interruptions. So this card can help you do that, and we also play the 1 copy of Call by the Grave because it's a broken card. For the extra deck, we have 3 copies of Sunavalon Dorias. Now, you play 3 because you need to be able to grind. The Sunavalon package, along with all the other cards that you keep getting back, basically means that you can do the same thing you do turn 1 as long as you have the things to get back, because this Colosseum gets back your THERION, and then your Faithful Adventure will get back the Griffon Rider that shuffled itself back. So being able to use the Sunavalon plays again because of the triple copies of Dorias means that we'll be able to make copies of Thrasher to push for damage, and this is how the deck wins. So yeah, that's why you need to play this card. So when this card is Link Summoned, you basically get to search a Sandvine spell and trap. 100% of the time, you're going to get Sowing if you already don't have it, because this card is amazing, but if you already have it, because it's a 3-of, you can also search your Shrine, which will give you an extender. So this is why this card is amazing. And when you take damage, you basically get back your life points, and you special summon a Sandvine Link monster to the zone this card points to. The one you're going to be summoning the most is one of the 2 copies of Sandvine Healer. This card basically says that you gain life points equal to the link rating of a Sunavalon monster this card points to when it's summoned. So you're going to get just 300 life points. So basically that means that you have more life points than your opponent, which is enough to basically trigger all your Armage's effects, which is what the deck aims, in order to be able to search all the plant requirements that you have in the deck in order to do the comp. We have 2 copies of Sandvine Thrasher. This is the heavy hitter of the deck. This card can go into even 4k attack points with Doria Trantier, and when it destroys a monster by battle, you can basically steal it and put it to the zone that a Sunavalon Link monster points to. But the thing is, you don't really rely fully on Doria Trantier, because there's another Sunavalon monster in the deck that basically gives you not only enough markers to make this card huge, but it also gives you multiple attacks with this card, which is why this card can be a really big threat during late. We have 2 copies of Aroma Seraphy Jasmine. You use both of them during the combo, because this effect is a soft once per turn to add a plant from your deck to your hand when you gain life points. You summon both of them, and when you link summon the second one, the material is always going to be Laurel, so you gain life points and you search 2 plants. This is why it's really good, and then you link both of these into Doria Trantier, which is going to search your Sunavalon Bloom. We have 1 copy of Daphne. This card is here in case you go into a super grind game. It's basically a Pot of Avarice, kind of like for the deck. It reshuffles 2 plant link monsters in your graveyard back into the extra deck by tributing 1 monster. It's not the card that is going to come up too often, but the deck does have the extra deck space for 1 more card, so I feel like this card can help you when you go into super grindy games, especially against decks like Branded, which they can grind forever. We played 2 copies of Sunavalon Melias. This is a revival effect that's also a Sunavalon, and this is why Thrasher is really powerful, because not only does this card revive Loki from the graveyard, but it also gives a Sunvine Link monster you control extra attacks up to the number of Sunavalon Link monsters you currently control. And this is at least 2. Most of the times you can even make 3 or 4 if you summon the second Melias, or if you summon Daphne, you can make your Thrasher attack so many times that you're basically going to destroy your opponent with just 1 big monster. We play 1 copy of Doria Trantier. This is the card that adds the trap Sunavalon Bloom that basically gives you another layer of interruption, and this card also has protection effects. It cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. It cannot be targeted for attack. This effect that cannot be targeted for attack, Dorias has too, but the thing is, Dorias never sticks to the field in order for this effect to come up, but your opponent can attack you directly if this is the only monster in your field, but it's never going to be that case. And once per turn, you can tribute a link monster this card points to destroy any number of cards your opponent controls up to that monster's link rating. So it's very easy to destroy even 3 cards or even 4 cards depending on the monster you tributed, which is really good removal. And this is why droplets can help break boards, because you don't really need to destroy the cards. If you just negate, you do have a lot of ways in order to deal with cards even before you enter the battle phase, so you can basically destroy your opponent multiple attacks with Thrasher, or by attacking with 4k with your token and your Griffon Rider, or with 28 for your regulars. We play 1 copy of Bengal Lancer. This is another card that basically gives you interruption. During the main phase, this is a quick effect. You can target an effect monster your opponent controls, you take damage equal to its attack, and then you bounce it to the hand. If you have Dorias on the field, when this effect is activated, not only are you going to get your life points back, but you're going to get another Sunvine from the extra deck. You're not going to have this scenario come up too often, because usually you have this with Doria Trantier, which unfortunately does not have the same effect to recover your life points, but still this is a really good card, and it's also a monster like Chaos Ruler that can basically recycle itself. You can banish 2 or more link monsters from your grave, the combined ratings equal 4, and then you special summon this, and then you banish it when it leaves the field. So not only is it disruption, but it's also a monster that can recur itself. And the only monster in the deck that is not a link monster is the 1 copy of Teardrop, the Rika Queen. Because of Snowdrop, you can get 2 level 8s on the field by manipulating the levels, and this is basically, once it has a Rika as material, you can basically tribute one of your opponent's monsters for cost, and then target a monster your opponent controls that tributed, and then you basically get another interruption. And this card gains 200 attack for each monster, each time a monster is tributed, so it can become even bigger. So basically, this deck does have so many big monsters that you can push for game, and the lines of interruption, again, if you don't have to deal with Mystic Mine, usually they're really good. And this is why, at least if you don't have the THERION package, I highly recommend the Adventure package packets, because as you can see, the disruption this deck mains it's not really out to Mystic Mine. Cards like Teardrop, they tribute monsters. Bengal Answer, they bounce monsters. You don't really have anything to negate spells and traps, so this is why Griffin Rider and Rakoback are so crucial for this strategy. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Sunavalon, for me, it's one of the most fun decks that came out of the Vrains era, and now that we have all these really cool engines to make the deck even stronger, I feel like the deck is now really good, can compete to a lot of levels, and with the element of surprise, this deck can win a lot of games. It feels very similar to the Punk THERION deck. Yes, it doesn't have any insta-win bundles like Calamity, but still it's a deck that can use a lot of different engines as one, and basically make its whole engine much better by adding up all these different things on top of each other. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.